Welcome to Day 3 of SEC Media Days in Dallas, Texas. I'm Jacob Morris. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. We hear from Alabama as well as the newcomers on the block, Texas, who talk about new rivalries as well as entering a new conference. Plus, ESPN's Jordan Rogers joins the show a little bit later, and we wrap up, as always, talking to ESPN Arkansas's Ty Richardson. But the first team to take the podium today was Alabama, sporting a little bit of a new look, and that's because Kalen DeBoer, now the head man for the Crimson Tide, and the big storyline today, the transition from the GOAT, Nick Saban, to Kalen DeBoer, and the new head man in Tuscaloosa, talking about how Saban has paved the way for him to succeed and is helping him along the way.
Well, I think Coach Saban's been nothing but gracious with time. Anytime I've reached out to him, he has an office over there at Stadium. I got a chance to go over there a couple times to see him, and he's a busy man too. And he's got his things he's doing, but I think I have just first of all, want him to always know that he's welcome, but I also appreciate that he has put forth the ultimate respect in trying to let us kind of establish who we are. I said it earlier, this morning, that anyone who's poured into this program, I want them to always feel a part of it.
DeBoer, of course, coming off a national championship appearance with Washington, and the team that he beat in the playoff semifinal, well, that'd be the Texas Longhorns. The newcomers on the block in the SEC, taking the podium for the first time at SEC Media Days, asked about a whole host of subjects, transitioning to a new conference, what they're excited for, new venues they might play in, but what Arkansas fans will be interested in is the Longhorns renewing rivalries. That's because Arkansas and Texas back on the schedule once again, and we asked Longhorn players about if they're excited to make the trip to Fayetteville and all the rivalry entails.
Honestly, I'll tell you about that day. I ain't gonna lie, I love that stadium. That stadium was electric. I love the rowdy fans up there. It was pretty cool experience.
I've had some teammates who played that game a couple years ago, and they talked to me about the atmosphere and all the excitement the fans bring. So just hearing that, I'm very excited to try to get in there and just get to experience the atmosphere of Arkansas.
It's definitely going to be cool to rekindle that rich traditional rivalry for sure. And I'm excited to go to Arkansas and play against them. Like you said, it dates back to whatever 1800 something. That's crazy. But no, it's going to be good for both universities to finally get back to that, because I think it was like the 50s and the 60s. They were just going back and forth. So that's going to be cool to get to play against them.
But the players not the only ones getting in on the fun. Headman Steve Sarkisian also asked about renewing the rivalry between Arkansas and Texas, and you can be sure he's got that date in November against Arkansas circled on his calendar.
First of all, I'd like to play better than we played in 2021. We did not play very good in that ball game, and it's a great environment. I jokingly say this, and I feel like when you go to Arkansas, that I almost at times feel like they hate Texas more than they like themselves. I mean, that's a real rivalry. That's when you know you're in a real rivalry. And I know so much has been made of us getting to play A&M again, but the fact that we get to play Arkansas again is awesome.
A rivalry renewed on November 16th inside Razorback Stadium. Meeting number 80 between Arkansas and Texas should be a whole lot of fun inside Razorback Stadium. Welcome back into the show, joined by a very special guest. SEC Network analyst Jordan Rogers joins the show. Jordan, we're going to talk a little bit of Hogs, and we've been asking people all week. Big news this offseason, Bobby Petrino makes his return to the Hill. What were your reactions, your emotions when you heard the news?
I love it, right? Because Bobby's a guy that through his career, he's shown that even with lesser talent, that he can win games through scheme and creativity on offense. And at Arkansas, you're able to recruit at a high level, but you go in games against Bama and Georgia, sometimes you're outmatched from a physicality, from a skill standpoint. You have a guy calling plays that can win you games with scheme, and that has been in those situations, on both sides of those situations. So I love the hire, loved it when he was at A&M, loved it when he was at a smaller school, beaten SEC schools. So he's proven across the board that he can dial it up, and I think they've added some talent to help out that side of the ball.
I'm going to spring something on you here. It might be bringing up a sore subject.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Bobby Petrino, top 10 Arkansas team back in 2011, fourth quarter comeback against Vanderbilt
This is
Commodores?
just ridiculous. Yeah, that was the most. Let me just walk you through that in case you didn't get to watch that game. We were dominating that football game. We were going in to score to put us up 28-14 with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, maybe 7 or 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Zach Stacy fumbles at the 1 yard line. It goes 99 yards for a touchdown. I chase down the guy, don't catch him. So now it's a tie ball game. The ensuing kickoff gets fumbled, and Arkansas gets it as well. We end up hitting a big pass play, getting down inside the 10 with no time left. And biggest regret of my career is we had a play called, a little flood play, to try to tie it up at the end there. Actually, no, to try to win it. We were down 3. And James Franklin goes, okay, throw to the tight end or nobody else. And as a young quarterback, I'm like, we're a top 10 team. I'm like, okay, yes, absolutely, I will do that. And tight end was covered, so I threw it out of bounds. Well, my under route was coming wide open right in front of the goal line. If I would have just gone through my reads and gone 1-2, thrown it to him, we would have won that football game. We missed a field goal, we lose. Not that I'm salty about that at all, or remember it.
Seems
at
like
all.
you don't remember at all. No distinct
15
memories
years
from
ago.
that one. There was a Jarius Wright 2-point conversion in there somewhere as well.
rub it in.
Yeah.
Rub
Well,
it
let's
in.
talk about Arkansas this year. We'll move forward
Yeah.
from the past. Sam Pittman, obviously in a pivotal year. From your
Totally.
perspective, what does he have to do to get the ship, the train back on tracks, and kind of get things back pointing in the right direction?
Yeah, I think defensively they just got to be more consistent. I think over the years, especially the last couple of years, just giving up big plays.
Yeah.
And really, it's not that they haven't had the guys. It's kind of been some fundamental things, pursuit angles, tackling. Like it's been below the standard that we expect from Pittman. And I think sometimes you need to get to that point to realize you got to go back to focusing on the small things. I think in the SEC, when you're chasing championships, you focus on the top tier stuff, right? The talent, the scheme, and you go, man, sometimes the best teams and the teams that consistently perform are those that don't make those little mistakes tackling or missing a coverage or missing a read. So I think there's an increased focus from the Razorbacks as a whole. I love Sam Pittman. I think he is the right man for this job. I think the changes they've made in the offseason are going to set themselves up to turn the corner, and I hope they do. I hope he's still coaching in the SEC for a really long time because I think he's one of the best. And I think the pieces that he's added, both coaching some of the guys through the portal, like a Taylon Green that's athletic, that can make some plays on offense, it's going to help him get back on track.
Yeah, swing year for the Hogs, big time. A couple more before we go. You brought up James Franklin. Obviously, your coach when you were at Vanderbilt, that big 9-4 year. What's your relationship with him at Penn State? And you guys still talk?
Yeah, James is great. And you know what's funny is just I remember as a player we butted heads, right? Because James came into a team that we weren't very good, and he was like, we're going to compete for championships, we're going to compete in the SEC, we're going to be this, that, and we kind of look around going, has he seen us play before? Like, this guy's crazy, right? So I think that there was some hey, I wasn't sure about this guy coming in here saying all these great things we were going to accomplish. I was like, I don't know if this guy's just selling us snake oil or what's going on. He is one of the best maximizers of talent that I've ever seen. And that's actually something that I see in Sam Pittman as well. There's certain coaches that are unbelievable X's and O's guys. And not that James isn't, not that Sam isn't either. But their secret sauce, like their superpower, is their ability to inspire and maximize the talent that players have that sometimes they're not able to tap into. That's what makes Sam special. That's what made James special. Like, we didn't add a bunch of big 5-star recruits at Vandy. We went from 2-10 to 6-7 to 9-4 with the same dudes. James just taught us how to play a different way. He just got more out of us. So Sam has that magic sauce as well, and I look forward to seeing more of it this year.
A good connection between Coach Pittman and Coach Franklin there. What are you most excited about for the rest of SEC Media Days here?
Oh, boy. Well, we got Bama here today. We got Texas here today. I mean, I just think the SEC as a whole is going to be so exciting this year. Some of the rivalries that get to be renewed. Some teams that have never been, to Norman, have never been to Austin. I still never been to Norman. So I'm looking forward to going for my first time. And I think with the 12-team playoff, a team like Arkansas that every year has had always one of the toughest schedules in the entire country because they were in the West. Now there's no divisions, like alleviates that a little bit. And now you don't have to be perfect. So you can lose 1, 2, maybe even 3, depending on who you beat in your strength of schedule, and still have an opportunity to make a run. I think that's what makes the SEC exciting. I think that should be exciting for Razorbacks fans as well.
Yeah, it should be interesting to watch. Storylines galore here at SEC Media
No
Days.
doubt,
Jordan
always.
Rogers, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks, man.
Back again for day 3 of SEC Media Days. ESPN Arkansas's Ty Richardson joins us once again. Ty, an interesting slew of teams coming through once again. We heard from Kalen DeBoer, the new head man, and it was interesting to hear from the balance, right? He talked about Nick Saban goes out. How do you replace the GOAT? And it was really interesting to hear him talk about, hey, Nick Saban, he's given me advice, but he's also done a great job of kind of letting me build the program my own way as well.
It is a balance to have that in the background. I mean, Coach Saban's making $500,000 a year. and he still has an office in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So you want to take his advice, but you also want to be your own host. Like you've had a mentor just like I have, and we take as much of their advice as possible, but we also have to go our own direction. And I think for Kalen DeBoer, who's had success at every college stop he's been at, he has to be his own coach, but it never hurts to have the GOAT in an office right next door.
Yeah, it was such a fascinating dynamic. He's up there on the stage in front of all the media people, and right in the back corner is Nick Saban sitting at that SEC Network desk watching everything he says.
He's smiling, kind of taking it in with Kirby and Sark and some of his – I mean, you think about it, Kirby – you've got Lane Kiffin. You've got Steve Sarkisian. There's probably another one I'm forgetting, but there's the list is long when it comes to Nick Saban assistants, and some he probably has a great deal of respect for. Others he still likes. I am curious to if the DeBoer experiment doesn't work, Jacob, who he would then recommend to take that job.
Yeah, it should be fascinating to watch how he handles year one at Alabama. Arkansas finally doesn't have the Tide on the schedule, so that's something to look forward to after 17 in a row, 16 in a row.
Yeah, ever since Nick Saban arrived in 2007 in Tuscaloosa, you should have won in 2007, you should have won in 2010, you should have won in 2014. You honestly should have won last year, 3-point loss. I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 games that you should have won, Jacob. You just ultimately could not figure out the keys to beat Nick Saban. So thank goodness he's gone.
On the SEC Network desk. Now on the other side, he's one of the media now. But then we saw Texas come through, and that's what everybody was waiting for. Similar to Oklahoma yesterday, the newcomers coming into the conference, and Steve Sarkisian got up in front of all of the media and was Steve Sarkisian. I think he was a little bit more polished than Brent Venables. Is that fair to say?
No question. Jacob, we kind of spoke to Venables not knowing how to answer certain questions. I mean, Sark was honest. He knows the expectations in Austin, and I just hope they overlook Arkansas. Yes. Texas has a loaded roster, as they often do, but their quarterback, who was here today, Quinn Ewers, has gotten hurt every year that he's played college ball. So there's no guarantee that he's going to be suiting up against the Razorbacks late in November. That would mean Arch Manning. You get to play another Manning, Arkansas fans, which would be just unbelievable if they were to beat them and possibly prevent them from an SEC championship or the college football playoff.
Yeah, it was interesting. Arkansas came up a fair amount today when talking to Texas players, when talking to Sark, because a theme today for them, renewing rivalries. Sark talked about the fact that this move to the SEC helped Texas in terms of A&M's back on the schedule, Arkansas is back on the schedule, and it seems like there's a fair amount of excitement in Austin to get the Arkansas game back on the schedule and back to being the tradition it really should be.
Yeah, Jacob, I think what he took in 2021 honestly kind of hurt Arkansas to a certain degree. Not the game that night, but he realized, this means a ton to Razorback fans. So in 2020, on November the 16th, when they come into town later this year, I'm not going to say they overlooked that game, but Arkansas, if I remember correctly, barely beat Rice the week before, Georgia Southern. It was not a great showing. So Texas had just coming off, I think, a win against Louisiana Lafayette, who was ranked, and they're ranked, and they're thinking, I'm Texas, but as they typically do, and they got curb stomped. I don't think Steve Sarkisian, even late in the season when injuries could play a factor, they're definitely not going to have the same approach they did 3 years ago.
Yeah, you wouldn't take that night away for the world if you're an Arkansas fan, but there's pros and cons to everything, and the con is that was right after the announcement Texas joins the SEC, and you could almost say that might have been the kick in the tail Texas needed to say, we need to get our stuff together if we're going to go to the SEC, because this is what we're going to see week to week.
Yeah, and it's, again, you're kind of, it's the catch-22, right? Like, you love getting that win, but it was a message to Texas on the line of scrimmage. John Ridgeway, Trey Williams, some of those guys just had field days against the Texas O-line. And then on the offensive line, Arkansas pulverized them the entire game, whether it was Rocket Sanders, A.J. Green, they ran roughshod. Dominique Johnson all over them the entire night. It's not going to be the same, but I would just hope that game at that point in the schedule is significant enough where you have this fan base want to still attend. It's going to be cold, even at 11 o'clock that day. It is going to be a game that you just hope has consequence to it, because if it doesn't, then Arkansas is going to find themselves in a situation that's much more difficult when they don't have their fan base behind them.
Yeah, and you could really feel the fan base coming through in that 2021 game. You mentioned Dominique Johnson. That was the play that was kind of emblematic of the whole game, right, where he ran through about 7 different Longhorns en route to the end zone. But that's not the same Texas team that Arkansas is going to see, to your point. Obviously, coming off a college football playoff appearance, they've got Kelvin Banks, who's going to be a top 10 pick on the offensive line. You talk about building in the trenches. Last year, they had 2 top 40 picks off the defensive line. So this is a team that's built for the SEC, and I know it's tough Razorback fans to hear, but talent-wise, at least, they don't take a backseat to anybody.
No, they really don't, outside of maybe Georgia, and that's painful because the idea was Texas is not going to be ready for the league. They did lose a lot, though. 11 draft picks. You think about, we got a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans watching right now who they just picked up. I'm blanking on the wide receiver's name. Xavier Worthy. Thank you. The 2 defensive tackles that you've referenced, but they have recruited really well under Steve Sarkisian. We know Texas has money, but again, that game is not always indicative of what the rosters look like on both sides. Oftentimes, Arkansas in that game, despite being heavy underdogs, which they are a double-digit underdog right now, they play them tough. And there's been several occurrences that not always win, but to compete. I just hope that team is able to compete that Saturday starting at 11 a.m.
Yeah, Sark had a great quote where he said, he said he was joking, he made sure, but he said, when we go to Arkansas, sometimes it feels like they hate Texas more than they like themselves. That kind of feels like a fair way to describe, we'll say, the feeling between the two teams.
I'll give Downing credit, the Oklahoma defensive back, that he actually came out and was like, if you're affected by a hand signal during the course of the game, you probably shouldn't be here. And I was like, how has it taken this long for somebody to say this? The best quote of the week. Not a coach, not Greg Sankey, but that was honest. And, I mean, if someone called the Hogs in front of the fan base or if did the Gator chomp, I mean, you might be irritated for a sec, but it affects, like, their entire ideology, which is pathetic, to be honest. But hopefully there's plenty of down horns that night, or that day, I should say.
That afternoon, November 16th, and it'll be allowed on the field as well. I can't remember if we talked about this yesterday, but the SEC coordinator of officials talking about exactly what you just said. He said, look, we're in a league where you've got Gator chomps, you've got a team in Ole Miss that does a land shark when they're on defense. He goes, if it is a travesty to the game, we will call horns down, a penalty, which essentially means if I tackle you, I got to be standing over you, going like this. But if not, Arkansas, any other team should be allowed to, because it's just part of the game.
It is. It's in the, like you said, there are other examples that you just pointed to that, I mean, if you did the Gator chomp in the midst of the game in Gainesville at the Swamp last year against a Florida player, there was a flag that was going to be thrown. But John McDade was pretty clear, this is not typical. Trust me, I want to see as many of them as humanly possible, not just in the Arkansas game, but in several games this season. But it's kind of like anything else in life. If you're going to talk trash, you've got to back it up. And hopefully Arkansas, again, is just in a situation where they can do horns down, because you don't want to see that horns up at any point on that game in late November.
November 16th, that could be a cold game. If that one gets ugly like the Missouri one, it starts to feel real brutal when it's cold out and everything else. Hopefully that's not the case. But wrapping up here, we've got the last day of media days coming up. That means the Razorbacks go. What are you looking for?
I just want to hear from Taylon Green. We got a chance to hear from him a few times, and I got to ask Coach Pittman, it's like, when did you know that this was your guy? I think Bobby Petrino always knew. He's known about him since high school. He's recruited him since high school. But when was that moment that Sam Pittman, your head football coach, knew that this is going to be the guy that I trust with possibly, I mean, if we're being honest, possibly my job this next season? I mean, that sounds a little severe and grave, but I think everyone is under the impression if they don't have a successful season, which I consider a bowl game, then things might go south. So I just, anytime you get a chance to hear from QB1, it's always refreshing. So I want to see what Taylon has to say tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be interesting also to see how Pittman reacts to questions about all that happened last year. They're going to come. He has to know they are coming. What does he say when he's faced with, how do you feel about your job security and all the above?
I'm hoping he's in a similar situation that we saw from Eli Drinkwitz a day ago, which he called out Dennis Dodd for having him high up on the list. He's on Dennis. Coach Pittman is number one on Dennis Dodd's list of, I think it's win or be fired is the term that was used. So you're hoping if Coach Pittman, whether he addresses it head on or he sideswipes it, that's not the main issue. The main issue is them winning football games. Football coaches are masters of blocking out the noise. That is not a skill set I have. I pay way too much attention to social media. So hopefully Coach is just headstrong on getting this team to at least a bowl game and maybe beyond, but that might be a lot to ask based on the schedule and based on the roster you have right now.
We shall see tomorrow morning. The Razorbacks kick off day 4. The final day of SEC Media Day should be a lot of fun. Ty, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely, Jacob.